Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Haerikyron. We are doing BIM story time tonight. However, notice we're going to start cutting down the time on it just a little bit. All right. Hopefully that's not feeding through. I apologize. Shouldn't be. If it didn't, yay. If it did, I apologize. Just want to make sure we're streaming correctly. Anyways, we are going to continue the story. However, these are going to be shortened down, which means the average chapter is going to take 2 sessions now in order to make up for that lost time, because I kind of enjoy doing it that long, a long session like that. I'm going to start drawing out my comic. I'm going to do it live. You can watch me do it. I'll do it probably every Friday after this, wherever the hell I am, whatever I'm doing, I'll just pick up and start doing it. Right now, I'm still in the middle of character design and writing my story, which I've already got laid out. So, anyways, without further ado, we are at a chapter. We kept the lights on, so we're going to continue there. They were waiting to see if stillness was courage or surrender. He squinted slightly, raising one hand enough to shield his eyes. My, he said, calm as ever. That's a bright light. I should say that like him. Sorry, my, that's a bright light. Do you need that when you're alone in the dark? He leaned back and laughed. The fire vanished. Gone. No smoke, no scorch, no heat. The tent stood untouched. The straw beneath them unburned. The air suddenly cool again, as the illusion shattered and fell away like glass that had never really been there. And the crowd exploded. Everyone was on their feet. The applause hit first, then laughter, then shouting, all of it crashing through the tent in a single overwhelming wave. Heckles clapped wildly, no performance left in it now, no calculated exaggeration, just real, helpless laughter as he doubled over and slapped one of his hands against his own knee. Others joined immediately, the energy surging outwards in bursts of voices and pounding hands. The whole tent came alive with it. Hee-haws nodded slowly, understanding, not surprise, but recognition, as if some final piece had just clicked into place. Zanzibar's smile widened. By and by, Mark said, his voice carrying easily over the roar of the room. I believe I understand. He looked towards the others. Not just at Bim now, at all of them. Malleability, a small nod. And spark. The word settled differently than applause did. Heavier. Truer. Bim stood in the middle of it all, hat slightly crooked, chest rising and falling, the last echo of the false fires still bright in his eyes. The crowd's energy pressed against him, but this time it did not threaten to crush him. Instead, it lifted him. Not because he had overpowered the illusion, not because he had shouted louder than anyone else in the room, but because he had answered fear with timing, pressure with presence, humiliation with a little nerve. Somewhere between the laughter, the spotlight, and the test meant to bend him, Bim had done something none of them had expected. He had made the ring answer back. His gaze returned to Bim. We will have you a master yet. You have already shown it. He taps his cane lightly once against the floor. Keep it burning, little light. The tent opened. Time passed. Hours, perhaps, Though it didn't feel like it, Pym stepped out first, and for the first time, no one led him. No hand at his back, no voice guiding him where to place his feet, no one pulling him into rhythm or pushing him forward to the next threshold. He crossed out of the tent under his own momentum, the warm noise behind him spilling into the menagerie like the last breath of a finished act. Annalise followed steps behind, watching him closely. Something had changed in her expression. Recognition, not of what he was, more of what he was becoming. Heckles drifted along after them, with his hands in his pockets. His posture still loose, still careless, crooked. Still carelessly crooked, though now the mockery in him felt lighter, less like a blade, and more like a bad habit. "Careful now," he muttered, loud enough to carry. "We've got to escort the wee little master home." He cast a glance towards Bim. Wouldn't want him getting lost in that giant hat. A faint smile tugged at Bim's mouth. He didn't answer, not because he had nothing to say, because he didn't need to. They continued walking. The path felt different now. Not that it was unfamiliar, which was the strange part. It was the same menagerie, the same lanterns hanging where they shouldn't, same winding roads, same strange figures passing under impossible lights. But it no longer felt like a maze designed to swallow him. The ground seemed steadier beneath his feet, the sound less overwhelming. The eyes on him no longer pressed the same way. He had entered this place being dragged from one moment to the next. Now he moved through it. Still small, still wearing a hat too large for his head, still only a child in a world far older and stranger than he could ever understand, but no longer only that. The lantern light brushed across his face as he walked, catching the pink warmth still lingering in his skin. Behind him, the tent of humility hummed with the fading life and laughter of the applause before. Ahead, the pathway of the menagerie curved onward beneath the pale, motionless moon. Yet somewhere inside him, something had changed shape. Not all at once, nor completely, but just enough for him to notice. Enough that the world also seemed to notice. After a while, Eccles peeled off from the group, turning down another winding path with the same off-centered ease he seemed to do everything with. He lifted one hand in a lazy wave without looking back. "Try not to grow too much without me," he called over his shoulder. Then he was gone, swallowed by lantern light, canvas shadows, and the shifting movement of the menagerie. Bim watched him disappear, then kept walking. I'm going to check one thing. I'm going to pause just for a moment, just to be sure. Okay, we're good. By the time they reached Van's estate, the noise of the carnival had been behind them, fading into something distant and almost dreamlike. The pale moon still hung overhead, unchanged as ever, silvering the stone paths and quiet gardens. Annalise hesitated at the door. It was only a moment, a small pause, a weighing. Then she followed him inside. Probably better, she decided. The house welcomed them both, with its unusual stillness, warm stone, quiet air, the faint scent of something lived in and clean. After the noise, the laughter, the spotlight, and the endless testing, the silence here felt different. They sat. The quiet returned. This time, it didn't feel so empty. It settled around them like a blanket instead of the endless void. Annalise leaned back slightly in her chair, her tail flicking once before going still. She glanced at him, and there was something softer in her expression now. Less performer, less guide, more person. So, she said quieter than usual, you did good. Really good. Ben looked down for a second, not quite knowing what to do with the praise that didn't come wrapped in a joke nor test. Annalise looked ahead instead of pressing him, giving the words room to sit where they had landed. I wasn't always here, you know. Her voice changed as she said it. More personal. More personal, more careful. Where I am from, things weren't great. She folded her hands loosely together, thumbs brushing once against each other as her gaze drifted somewhere beyond the room. People fought constantly over things they stopped understanding a long time ago. The line came out tired rather than bitter, like the kind of truth that had worn itself smooth through repetition. The moonlight pulled softly across the floor between them, and in the quiet of Ben's estate, with the menagerie further away now and the night refusing to move, Annalise began to sound less like part of Ben's new world and more like someone who had survived being broken by her own. A faint frown touched her face. Opinions, beliefs, sides that didn't even remember why they hated each other. She shook her head slightly, red hair shifting against her shoulders. It just became normal. That was the worst part of it. The way she said it. Not with anger, not even with surprise, just the quiet disguise of someone who had lived too long inside something broken and watched people treat it like the weather. Her voice dropped. So when I found this place, I ran. She glanced at him. I snuck away. A faint smile ghosted across her lips. Thin and tired and touched by the memory of being young enough to think escape could be as simple as slipping out, when no one was looking. I hated that. Mistakes. They happen. This is live, by the way. This isn't some AI bullshit. Like, whoop, I can take my head off. I can do a bunch of shit because I'm real. Anyways, and Venzible found me. He held his breath for a moment, long enough for the words to settle, like I was something misplaced. A quiet huff of laughter left her. Then, soft and dry, not because it was funny, because somehow it was, because that sounded exactly like him. He told me I didn't belong here. Her eyes softened as she said it, the sting of the memory worn smooth by time, but not erased. I asked him to listen anyway, and he did. The words came out gently, but they carried more weight than anything louder ever could have been. In it was gratitude, the shape of a life bending in a different direction because, for once, someone had stopped and listened. She leaned back in her chair. He let me stay. A small smirk returned. After telling me if he took in every lost kid, this place would turn into a daycare. That one almost made the root feel warm again. Because beneath the joke was something else Bim could hear clearly now. He had let her stay, just like he had let Bim stay, and suddenly the menagerie felt a little less like a place that simply swallowed lost children whole, and more like a place that kept finding them first. She looked at him again. So I showed him what I could do. It's only been about 3 months longer than you. She smiled. Not a performance, not like a guide, like someone trying to sound reassuring because she thought he needed it. Personal, soft, and earned. So I'll say it properly. A small nod. Welcome to the menagerie, little light. Bim rolled his eyes. Just a little, not rude nor dismissive, only enough to prove he could. Annalise's smile widened. After everything, it felt good to do something so small, something so normal. So they began to talk. Not about titles, not about pillars, nor vessels, or tents, or futures too large to carry. They just talked. Little things, half-formed thoughts, questions that didn't need perfect answers, the kind of conversation that wondered instead of pushing, soft enough that neither of them had to guard every word. The house stayed quiet around them, the pale moonlight resting along the windows and stone floor, and little by little, the night lost some of its sharpness, until the silence stretched long enough that sleep began tugging at them again. Bim's eyes felt heavier. His thoughts began to slow. The energy that had held him upright through the evening finally started to thin. I'm a go, he muttered. His voice came out rough with tiredness, the words half falling apart before they fully left him. He pushed himself upright towards his room and headed towards his room, one hand dragging lightly along the wall as he went, more from exhaustion than uncertainty. Annalise stayed behind, curled slightly on the couch, waiting, not restless, not unsure, just there, as if some part of her had already decided she wasn't leaving until she knew the house had settled around them properly. At some point, the room grew quieter still, the kind of quiet that comes when evening begins to allow you to drift towards sleep. Then, sleep took her. A scream, sharp and piercing. "Eh! Who the hell are you, and what did you do with Bim?" Annalise snapped upright, too fast. Her body lurched before her mind could fully catch up, and she pitched off the couch, hitting the floor hard with a jolt that rattled through her elbows and knees. Pain flashed up her arms. She barely felt it. Then she scrambled up all at once, fell bristling, heart already racing as she bolted towards the voice. "Ben! Wait!" She ran into the hall just in time to see Ben standing rigid beneath the pale spill of moonlight from the windows, one hand already raised. Her fingers were moving, fast and precise, tracing the beginning of a sigil in the air. Lines of faint light had already started to gather between them, thin and dangerous, and curling into shape with the promise of law made sharp. Annalise shouted before the pattern could finish. "That's Bim!" Ben froze. The formation such a flickered, shivered, then vanished. Her hand dropped. She took a breath. One long, collapsing breath. Oh, thank God! Bim stood there. Different, not monstrous, not wrong, but undeniably changed. The hallway light caught him fully now, and the difference was impossible not to miss. He was taller than he had been when Ben last seen him earlier that day, not by much in the grand scale of things, but enough that it hit the eye all at once, enough to shock. His face still had the softness of childhood, but less of the fragile roundness from before. His frame had stretched slightly, his posture altered by the strange new certainty settling into him. Even the way he stood felt different. Still small, still young, but no longer quite the same child who had gone out under the oversized hat and two big sleeves. One horrible second, Ben had seen a stranger in her own hall. Now, looking harder, she saw Bim. Just further along than she had expected. Annalise slowed, breathing hard, one hand braced against the wall, as the last of the panic drained out of her in ragged pieces. Ben stared at him, then at his face, then at his height, then back to his eyes. Recognition settled in properly at last, followed immediately by something else. Alarm, confusion, and beneath both of those, concern. What? Ben said slowly, still catching up. Happened to you? Not dramatically, but enough. Enough that the eye caught it instantly, even if the mind needed a moment longer to understand. Bim's face was still his, but something in it had shifted. His expression sat caught between confusion and something sharper now, as if the edges of him had been quietly redrawn while no one was looking. Well, what were you going to do to me? He asked. Ben didn't hesitate. Eject you from the carnival grounds. Bim blinked. Huh? Annalise finally reached them, slightly out of breath, one hand still pressed on her side from the run. She was going to launch you back into the menagerie like launching a cannonball from a cannon, she added casually. Hi, sorry, Miss Ban, I fell asleep. Ban waved it off without looking at her. It's fine. Her eyes stayed on Bim, studying, measuring, not with suspicion, at least not anymore. Something had changed. And she knew it. Ben stood there for another long moment, moonlight catching in her eye as she looked at him, not like a stranger, not even like a child under her care, but like a problem finally turning just enough for the answer to show itself. I apologize. Not shocked, not confused, just see. I see it now, she said quietly. The words landed softly. But they changed the air in the hallway all the same. Annalise straightened a little beside them. Her breathing eased as she looked from Ben to Bim and back again. She didn't interrupt. Something in Ben's voice made the silence feel important. Bim stood still beneath it, subtly aware of his own body again. His height, the altered fit of his clothes, the strange new way both of them were looking at him. He hadn't asked for any of it, hadn't even fully noticed it happening until their reactions made it impossible to ignore. And whatever Ben saw in him now, it was not small. Then, just like that, Ben shifted, more practical, more immediate. We need you to get some real clothes. She dragged a hand lightly down her face, exhaustion finally breaking through whatever was left of her composure. God, I've been so lazy. She glanced towards Annalise. Well, so busy at the same time. Her eyes softened for a second, then gone. Flat. The tiredness hit her all at once, heavy in total, like her body had finally decided it was done. Hey, she said, already turning away. Can you take him to the store? She didn't wait for an answer, didn't even slow down. Help him pick up something friends above approved, you know, She made faint, lazy gesture over her shoulder. Make him look, like boss man. She reached the door, opened it. Try not to let him look too ridiculous. Intentionally, the door shut. Then a second later, a loud thud. Silence. Annalise blinked once. Then looked at the door. Then at Bim. Despite everything, the screaming, the transformation, the near ejection, the impossible amount of nonsense that had become normal in less than 2 days, something about that final thud made the whole moment feel strangely ordinary. Ben had reached her limit, spectacularly. Annalise let out a small breath through her nose, somewhere between a laugh and a surrender. Well, she said, tilting her head slightly towards him, I think that means we're going to go shopping. Her eyes moved over him again, this time with less surprise and more assessment. The changes in him were still there. The height, the sharper look in the face, the growing sense that he was shifting faster than anyone had planned for. But underneath all of it, he was still Bim, still standing in the hall, still looking like he had not fully caught up to his own body yet. Annalise's mouth curved slightly, and apparently, she said, your first official mission is to stop dressing like a hunted doll. The house stayed quiet around them. Ben did not move behind the door. That, more than anything, confirmed she was truly done. So the night turned once again. Not towards danger, not towards spectacle, not towards tests or titles, but towards something much more simple. A store. New clothes. And whatever came next for a boy who had already started outgrowing the version of himself he had been yesterday. Then, she snorted. Yeah, she didn't make it to the bed. A small laugh escaped her as the last of the tension eased from her shoulders. All right, little man, come on. She stretched once, rolling her shoulders until something in her back gave a slight, satisfying pop. We're gonna go grab Heckles first. A grin spread across her face. And then, we're hitting Villette's token stand. She started towards the door, motioning him along with an easy flick of her hand. Who better to have beside you for this moment than someone who's going to ruin every second of it and make everything just a little salty? Bim gave her a look. The look. Do we really have to? Annalise laughed immediately. Oh, come now. Growing light. It'll be fun. Bim shook his head slightly. Yeah. Funny. Dry and flat. Not convinced in the slightest, but he followed. The quiet order of Bannistate fell away from them. The menagerie gathered itself back around their step. Lights flickered overhead in uneven rhythms, some warm and steady, others pulsing faintly as if reacting to music far too distant to ever hear. Pathways bent where they shouldn't have, curving subtly when Bim was certain they had been straight not a moment before. Distant laughter echoed from places that did not seem to exist until sound arrived to them. Canvas walls breathed in and out with impossible depth. Lanterns swayed when there was no wind. Somewhere further off, something metallic clinged. I don't have anything for that. I should have something for that, but I don't. Later, we'll get it. Because there should be talking to them, and I got plus not sure. Applause followed. Then a voice cried out in a delighted panic, and at least did not slow. That more than anything told Bim not to ask. They stopped in front of a structure, if it could be called that. At first glance, it looked like a house, brick, stacked, and familiar. But the closer Bim got, the less held together it was. It had walls, a square shape, the rough suggestion of shelter, but something ordinary enough to belong at the end of the street. Sorry. The rough suggestion of shelter, something ordinary enough to belong at the end of the street. And then the details began to fall apart. Nothing touched. The bricks floated in place, suspended by something unseen, each one hovering just a breath apart from the next. They drifted slightly, lazily, as if they weren't fully committed to being a wall at all. Gaps opened between them, revealing a hollow interior and strips of open air where solid structures should have been. The light slipped straight through it. So did shadow. There were no doors, no proper windows, no real support. Just the idea of a house, loosely assembled and somehow still standing. Bim slowed, staring. The whole thing felt like someone had remembered what a home was supposed to be, then rebuilt it from secondhand thoughts and bad confidence. Annalise crossed her arms, a smirk tugging at her mouth. Yeah, she said, that's about right. A voice came from inside, muffled at first, then Heckle stepped out. Not through a door, just through. The drifting bricks parted around him without resistance, and a few rotated lazily in place after he passed, as though trying to remember whether they had ever been a wall to begin with. He emerged scratching the side of his head, completely unbothered by the fact that most buildings preferred people instead of entrances. Nothing touched. The bricks continued to float in space, suspended by something unseen, each one hovering just a breath apart. Wait a second. Annalise folded her arms, catching his expression before she looked back at the building. Yeah, he said with a knowing smirk. Okay. The voice drifted from his side. Sorry, I read the same thing twice. I accidentally hit up. So I apologize. Yep, he said, gesturing loosely to the floating mess behind him. Just like me. A crooked grin widened. Hello, Shell. A few seconds passed, then, love it. The line landed the way most things from Heckles did. Half joke, half confession. No clear boundary between the two. Finn looked from him to the broken, not broken house behind him. For the briefest second, he couldn't tell which one was pretending harder. Michael's eyes dropped to him, then slowly lifted back to Annalise. So, he clasped his hands together quietly, his expression turning thoughtful in the most dangerous possible way. How are we painting the kid? Annalise didn't miss a beat. Oh, you already know. Echoes groaned immediately, full of theatrical suffering. Oh, you're no fun. He crouched until he was nearly eye level with Bim, squinting thoughtfully as though inspecting a deeply questionable design choice someone had insisted on making permanent. Hmm. He leaned a little closer, turned his head one way, then the other. He would make a better me. The thoughtful tilt of his head. We could fix that. Then his grin spread, slow and bright, threatening in the way only Heckles and in the way only Heckle's humor ever managed to be. Real easy. Annalise shot him a look. Don't. He raised both hands at once. Innocence painted across his face with a suspicious perfection. What? He looked back at Bim, though, seeing it as a possibility. I'm just saying, little chaos. One tragic backstory adjustment. Sorry, one tragic backstory adjustment. A dash of charm. He pinches his fingers together. Maybe a sprinkle of emotional damage. At least didn't even turn this time. Don't. That landed harder. Echoes froze with one finger still raised, considering arguing anyway. Then let his hand fall. A long theatrical sigh escaped him, heavy enough to suggest the world had once again chosen to reject true artistic genius. Fine, he muttered. Ruin my vision. But his eyes stayed on Bim, still bright, still crooked, still clearly building 5 worse ideas behind the one he had admitted out loud. Bim stared back at him, not impressed, not entirely worried either, just tired enough to understand that being around Heckles meant every sentence was either a joke, a warning, or both. Somehow, that was starting to feel normal. Fine. Heckles stood and brushed imaginary dust from his coat with wounded dignity. But if he ends up looking like a responsible adult, I'm blaming you. He turned and stared down the path without waiting for approval. Come on then, tiny boss. He glanced over his shoulder. Let's go make you disappointing. Annalise laughed under her breath and nudged them gently forward. Don't listen to him. A small pause. Then, a little more. Okay. Listen to him a little. Bim gave her a tired look. Annalise only smiled and kept walking. The 3 of them moved off together. The lights of the Menagerie shifted ahead as Villette's token stand came into view beyond the bend. Morning never arrived, but awareness did. It seeped into the Menagerie without sunrise, without birdsong, without any clean dividing line between night nor day. Lantern light softened from rich magenta into gold, as though the tents themselves were exhaling after holding their breath through the dark. The air smelled faintly of ash and sugar. Last night's spectacle still clung to the canvas, but the early stillness had settled cool against the skin. Bim walked between them. The top hat stayed. Everything else felt undecided. Annalise moved at one side. Eccles drifted at the other. Neither pulled him forward. Neither guided his steps. They simply matched him, and that felt stranger than being led. The midway opened around them in slow pieces. Stalls sat half awake beneath striped awnings. Fabric whispered overhead beneath. Whispered overhead whenever a draft moved through. Lanterns swung in lazy arcs. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang once, thin and lonely. Then it went quiet, as if it had thought better than continuing. The world around them felt caught between breaths, not asleep nor awake. Lanterns swung in lazy arcs. Somewhere in the distance, the bell rung one more time, thin and lonely. Aha! He pressed one hand to his ribs, eyes narrowing with exaggerated betrayal. She got me. Oh. Right, the ribs. He coughed again. Stings. Emotionally, perhaps. Annalise glared sharpened. Heckles sagged back anyways, shameless as a dying prince on a cheap stage. You nearly took my breath away, darling. And Bim laughed. Not loud, just enough, a small sound, quick and real, slipping out before it could stop it. After everything, it felt strange in the best possible way. Light, unforced, and alive. Annalise heard it and glanced at him, some of the heat leaving her expression. Eccles still half folded, and a pretended injury he had rewritten his future, peeking up through his curls with a crooked little grin. There it is, he said hoarsely. See, I'm a gift. Annalise rolled her eyes. You're more of a problem. Those are often the same thing. The midweights seemed to loosen around them. After that, lanterns swung a little easier overhead. The distant bell stayed quiet. Even the breathing canvas felt less like it was listening for something sharp. Not safe, just easier to stand in. And Bim, with a strange new weight still sitting on his shoulders at the top of his still too large hat for his head, felt the smallest shift inside of him. Not certainty nor belonging, but something close enough to keep walking towards. The laugh slipped out before he could stop it, small, brief, and warm, enough to cut through the hush hanging over the midway. Heckle's eyes looked up immediately. You find that funny, huh? Annalise raised her fist again, casual this time. A warning. Her smirk sharpened in one corner. Nah, she said. I just find it amusing. Echoes threw both hands up at once. Yeah, okay. He took half a step back, eyes darting to her fist. No need to start swinging, miss. He straightened by a degree, recovering his posture and his pride all in one breath. After all, his grin spread across his face, quick, crooked, deadly stupid. You hit like a girl, and she swung. He leaned. This time she missed. Her footing slipped just enough to break her stance. Not a fall, but close. Eccles burst into laughter, bright and obnoxious against the quiet. He clapped once, more pleased with the miss than anyone had any right to be. Come on now, he said, stepping between them with all the confidence of someone who had absolutely caused a problem. We're a team, aren't we? Annalise lowered her fist, but not her glare. Eccles gave Bim a loose little gesture, almost as if presenting him. And Champ here seems to be moving along just fine. His grid stayed in place. The tone beneath it changed. However, Annalise noticed first. Her smirk thinned. Eccles looked sideways at her. You have shown tonight, again, with the brothers. The words did not sound dangerous by themselves. That made the shift stranger. Annalise's shoulders straightened. Her tail, which had been flicking lazily behind her, went still. Bim looked from one to the other, and no one had said the joke was over. But it was, bleeding into deep maroon. The light dimmed with it, warm at first, then darker, richer, almost stained. The smell changed too, less sugar, more iron, Bim noticed. The menagerie changed all the time, but this felt less like whimsy and more like a warning. Eccles clapped once, sharp enough to snap the moment forward. Now, Annalise, he said lightly. Those, though the play had thinned at the edges, could you find this gentleman some tokens to pay for his clothes? He looked ahead, towards something neither of them could see yet. We should be getting going. The show does not move on its own. For the briefest flicker, the lantern above them dimmed. Not out, but enough. The shadow between the awnings deepened, and the maroon overhead looked closer to dried blood than dyed fabric. Bim caught his reflection in a shop window as they passed. For a split second, it did not quite match his movement. He slowed without meaning to. Only for a fraction. In the glass, the hat sat the same. The shape was his, the size was his, but the timing was wrong. Just enough to make his stomach tighten. It was like the reflection had taken one heartbeat too long to decide to become him. Like something in the window had looked back first. Then it corrected. Perfectly. The moment vanished. But not cleanly. Bim knew what he had seen. He stood there for a second longer, caught between the pull to look again and the sudden certainty that looking again could be a mistake. Behind the glass, the darkened carnival shifted. For a breath, Bumpling taller seemed to stand where his reflection should have ended, watching, smiling. Then the lantern light swung overhead, and it was gone. Bim stepped back. Only a little. Eccles moved first, drifting towards the window as if he had noticed nothing at all. Or noticed everything and decided not to say it yet. He glanced outside. Then spoke without turning. Now. We have time to shop later. We must be off. And you should not keep Master waiting. Bim looked up at him. But I thought I was going to see the brothers. Eccles gave a crooked shrug. Yes, and that changes nothing. They are under the Master's tent, which means the Master is more than likely waiting for you already. Annalise stepped in with that calm, knowing tone of hers, the kind that always sounded like it had somewhere deeper to go. Bim, it's better to be patient and wait than to keep others waiting. She kept walking as she spoke, guiding their small procession along the path. Her steps were steady, her voice measured, and beneath the words was the sense that she was not only explaining etiquette. I said that all weird because I just she was teaching him to carry himself, to rush and to fumble. To fumble is to draw eyes for the wrong reason. To expect is one thing. To be awaited, that's something else entirely. The menagerie shifted around them. Lantern light warmed the path in soft pools of gold and copper, but the air ahead had already begun to tighten, shaping itself around whoever waited there. Canvas whispered overhead. Somewhere deeper in the grounds, the bell rang and faded again. Heckle snorted. Listen to her. Ben's been in your head for 5 minutes and you're already getting rules with your breakfast. Emily shot him a look. And yet somehow you remain uncorrected. That, Heckle said, placing one hand hermetically against his chest, is because I am a delight. Bim rolled his eyes, though the corner of his mouth twitched despite himself. They reached the tent. At last, its canvas was washed in warm orange light, rich and low, and as though sunset had been caught and sewn into the fabric. Lantern glow pulled in the seams and folds, making the whole structure seem to breathe with each faint shift of the air. It felt alive in a different way than Ben's estate had, less sharp, less controlled, no less dangerous. Heckle stopped at the entrance and glanced down at Bim. His smile was crooked as ever, but quieter now. Well, champ, don't let your hat get too big for your head. We both have our own shows to do. I'll catch you later, little light. Then he peeled away, drifting off in a lazy swagger of someone who never seemed to arrive anywhere by accident. The Menagerie seemed to bend slightly around him as he went, making room for his nonsense before he even decided where to put it. Annalise lingered. For a moment, she only looked at Bim. Then, she leaned in and wiped a small smudge from his face with her thumb. The tenderness of it caught him completely off guard. Bim recoiled at once, all wounded dignity and fresh offense. She scrubbed the same spot again as he rolled his eyes, as though that solved the problem. Annalise smiled, not mocking, just warm. Go make a good impression. Gong and Gong have requested that you come train with them more. So, we'll be doing this for a little while. She let that settle before speaking again. Heckles was right. I need to head to my own show, too. This tent is closed today, so go on in. I'll come get you in a few hours. Bim nodded once. Then, after a moment, he looked at her with the same blunt honesty that always seemed to outrun his thoughts. I'm not a fan of people, but... He frowned, searching for the words. I kinda like when they pay attention. Annalise laughed softly, not at him, but for him. That's good. She folded her arms loosely. It means you don't want people. A small smile. You want to be seen. Bim considered that. He wasn't sure if she was right. He wasn't sure if she was wrong either. That means, she continued, there's hope for you yet. She reached up as though she were about to straighten his hat. Thought better of it. Her hand lingered for the briefest moment before falling back to her side. Now go on, little light. Head in. Bim turned towards the tent. Warm orange light spilled across the brim of his oversized hat and traced the edges of his face, stretching his shadow long across the packed earth behind him. The cannabis breathed slowly in lantern glow, folding, rising, and settling with each slow current of air. Warmth drifted from within, dust, old fabric, the faint scent of polished wood. Laughter that had soaked into the canvas years ago never quite left. The quiet promise of a strange waiting for its a stage waiting, not a strange a stage waiting for its next story. He stopped at the entrance, just for a moment, not out of fear nor respect. Every tent he had entered had changed him somehow. He knew this one would too. Not only he felt the warmth of the lanterns beyond, the hush before the performance, the stage pressure of being expected. It was different from being watched, different from being tested. Expectation had weight to it. It asked something. And standing there in the threshold, hat crooked, shoulders still too young for everything gathering around him, Ben felt the weight settle more fully than it had before. Then he stepped forward, nearly fumbling his hat all at once. He caught it with his hand at the brim, with his left hand before it could slide over his eyes, stumbling in half step. Then he corrected himself inside the dim orange tent with as much dignity as he could attempt to recover. Most of the space was swallowed in shadow. Only the center could be seen clearly, a clean circle where pale moonlight bled down from somewhere high above, silvering the floor in a perfect ring. Dust drifted through the narrow beams like slow falling ash. Everything beyond it vanished into layered dark, and there, at the center, stood the master of the tent, Gunzabark. He raised one hand. In the far side of the tent, a small section bloomed with lantern light. A large cylindrical device stood there, half brass, half shadow. Its shape strange and deliberate, like a machine built for a purpose Bim could not begin to guess. The metal caught the glow in dull gold flashes. Then the light vanished. Clark flicked his wrist. The lanterns dimmed again. Another gesture. Another burst of warm light. This time farther up and slightly to the left. A square frame hung suspended in the dark, tilted slightly, as though the tent had started a thought and left it unfinished. Rope dangled from one side. A narrow ledge jutted nearby. Then that too fell back into blackness, dim again and again. Light flared in different places throughout the tent. Bars, platforms, ropes, hanging shapes, narrow ledges. Each appeared only for a heartbeat before sinking back into shadow. Here, a ladder with no visible support. There, a beam too thin to ever trust. Somewhere higher, a suspended ring turning slowly in the air that did not seem to move. A suspended ring turned slowly in the air that never appeared to move. It was as though Bark were building an obstacle course in the dark, not by hand, but by attention and choice. Bim stood still, caught beneath the orange hush of the tent, watching the master shape the darkness around him. It did not feel like watching someone prepare a room. It felt like watching a room decide what kind of lesson it wanted to become. It felt like watching someone decide what kind of challenge the room was allowed to become. Bim was so caught in it that when a hand touched his right shoulder from behind, he nearly jumped out of his skin. "Hey, bud," a voice whispered, close and far too casual. "We're not supposed to watch. We're just supposed to run." Bim spun. Gong stood behind him, grinning as though warning someone away from a moonlit death maze was perfectly normal as a morning errand. Restless energy sat in every part of him, in his shoulders and his hands. The slight bounce of his heels against the floor, short and quick moving. Gong looked half dressed for rain and half dressed for a joke no one else had heard yet. His beige trench coat nearly reached his knees. Black boots clicked softly beneath it. A black roller derby sat on his head, and he was the black roller derby sat on his head, and he wasn't performing. His glasses gave him an oddly thoughtful look, like a professor who wandered into a circus by mistake. and found the mistake more interesting than leaving. A cherry pipe rested near the corner of his mouth, smoke curling sweet and lazy into the dim air. Vanilla Dutch Cavendish followed him, warm and rich, cutting through the dust of the canvas, with the smell of old wood, lamplight, and stories too old to be told after midnight. And this is where I'm going to cut it for now. We will pick up right here next Friday. I'm going to be back in about 15 minutes. It's hot. I'm going to lose the hat. I'm going to change the clothes. I want to thank you if you made it this far. But I'm going to pick back up at a slightly different angle and a slightly different background, and I'm going to draw my main character. So if you want to stay tuned, here in about 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to start up stream number 2. But anyways, if you made it this far, I'd really like to thank you. And if you're a truck driver or whatever out there, or a pilot, or I don't know what the hell, a captain, a boat, what do they call it, an attendant for a train, whatever you're doing, be safe out there. Remember, make it home. Somebody loves you. I'm going to continue doing the songs at the end of my episode, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do lyrics just so you can hear it. And I'm going to sit here, and at the end of this, we'll go dark. I'm going to take a break, and then I will come back. So I want to thank you again, and I will see you next time. And things might be a little different. It's just I have to shorten the episode, and I got a lot of stuff to cut, and I couldn't think what to cut because I spent quite a bit of time on this. So thanks again, and see you next time.